Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Transformation Weight Control podcast. I'm Alex, and we're here with Rich and Casey. I'm going to turn it over to Rich. He can take it away.
Thank you, Alex. Alex is our ChatGPT of computer genius. And the only reason that this works so well is because of Alex. And the best part about the whole thing is that I don't have to worry about one tech part because Alex is here and covers it. And it took me like 10 months to learn how to use Zoom. So it's the best. Anyway, so this is our sixth episode at Transformation Weight Control, and I'm going to introduce Casey in one moment. And just to let everybody know that the purpose for these podcasts, for all of them, is to inform you, the listener and viewer, and inform you with experts, with people who are completely committed to their field, who are well educated, have a lot of experience, researchers and clinicians. I worked at a research and clinical location for 25 years. And so I was doing both clinical and research, and I know a lot of those folks. So we've had a lot of them on. But it's also to dispel myths out there. Alex and I have watched some videos together, and I just cannot believe what I hear sometimes. And Alex is a really smart guy, and these what appear to be reputable people are telling science the way it isn't. And how would Alex know, or any of you know? So we want to be the trusted place to go to. And we also are going to, and we have already presented some of the people from our program who have transformed their lives. And we want people to understand what this is all about struggling with weight and the addiction of it, the disease of it. And so we've been presenting that as well. So that's where we are. So tonight we are very fortunate to have Casey Flowers. Casey is a registered dietitian, nutritionist. She's also a certified diabetes care and education specialist, and she's much younger than I am. I am a certified diabetes educator, but that's what we used to call it in the olden days. And in the newer days, they put a few more letters after it. So, but that is a certification, folks, that really means something. You can't work in a hospital or a diabetes clinic or a doctor's office in diabetes unless you do have that certification. And Casey does have it, and it's a rigorous exam. And she has a master's of science degree in nutrition from University of Memphis. Okay. So I want to say one last thing about Casey, and then I'm going to let her speak. So when I was searching for registered dietitians, I would always ask for a reference or references. So I had a reference from Casey, and I called this person, and this person just went on and on and on about Casey. So much so about how great she was. And I was thinking, this is a setup, and this is Casey's mom, because it just couldn't be possible that there could be somebody who could be as good. However, I discovered very quickly that she is. She knows what she is talking about. She is experienced. She is smart. She is enthusiastic. She has the unique ability to know virtually everything anybody asks. However, if she doesn't know, which is rare, but if she doesn't, she will admit she doesn't, and she will say, I don't know, but I will find out for you. And then you know what? She does find out. And that is rare, to have a professional person who is humble enough to be confident enough to say, I'm not really sure, but I'll find out for you. So I have been working with her directly, running our weight loss medication support group, which we're going to talk a bunch about tonight. But I have been working with her directly. She and I run that support group, and it is the only one in the country. And it has been a pleasure to work with her. I have, in my 44 years, worked with many dietitians in 44 years, and she is one of the tops. She is a stick of dynamite, and I am just so happy to have her with me, and we work well together. And sometimes she yells at me, and sometimes I yell at her because she kind of takes over the whole group and doesn't let me.
Never.
That's true. Anyway, let me turn it over to Casey, and why don't you introduce yourself, say whatever you'd like, and then we'll get started on some questions and conversation.
Definitely. Thank you for that awesome introduction. And sorry for my cat who's like has no decorum whatsoever.
I thought you had a dog.
It's totally okay. There's dogs and like all kinds of stuff happening around me.
Yeah, they don't care. They do not care about your real time job. So I'm Casey. I work in Atlanta. So meeting Rich and working with a bunch of New Yorkers have been a great experience for me. I've learned a lot. I don't interrupt anybody ever because I have Southern charm. Okay.
It is true.
Yeah. I am an outpatient dietitian currently where I see anybody from diabetes to weight management to bariatric surgery to cardiovascular, but my heart is always going to be in weight management. So super happy to be here today to talk about it.
And you are going to be speaking soon, or have you already done that?
No, next week. Next week I
And
have
go
three
ahead.
talks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead. Tell people what because you're giving three talks in one.
Three talks, yes. I have a problem. I can't say no to anything. I'm going to be speaking at the American Society of Bariatric and Metabolic Surgery conference in Washington, D.C. They have a new certification coming out for advanced nutrition. So I'm going to be teaching the pre and post op evaluation, and then I'm going to be teaching or presenting on gender affirming care and what does that mean for nutrition because there's not a lot of research out there for it right now. And then diet culture and how that impacts our, our food choices and how we navigate through our health because sometimes or most of the time weight doesn't equate to health. So how do we navigate through that?
You know, that's quite an honor, and not everybody always gets asked to give more than one talk at a conference, and Casey's giving three of them. So I guess you really maybe aren't supposed to say that a dietitian is a smart cookie, but
A
she
smart
is
asparagus.
a smart what? A what? What? Yeah, yeah, a smart stalk of broccoli. She's just
No.
good.
I like that. As the vegan in the room, I like that.
And Alex is the vegan in the room, and we won't talk much about Alex's history except to say that this is a man who has transformed himself totally. I met him; he was 3-pack-a-day smoker. The guy now exercises ferociously. He ran a half marathon and a K in one day. He's got every kind of gym equipment you can possibly imagine at home.
Not really.
Oh my God! He's got things I never even heard of. It's amazing. Anyway, and he's very interested. And although no medical or science background, he has a lot of genuine interest in all of the subjects we talk about. And so it's wonderful to have him because this isn't live; it's recorded, and he'll represent the population in his questions. So he is a real smart thinking guy. So that's terrific to have working with him. And I've been working with him for 20 years. So Casey, okay, I typically don't kind of just start with one question, but I am going to with you, which is because of your passion for this field of nutrition. I am curious, what got you so passionate and so interested that you went on from college to graduate school and to diabetes and what was burning in you that got you so interested in this? Because I will you are super passionate, and it's not that common always to be quite so passionate, but you really are. You enjoy it, and you have fun, everything. Tell us, how did this happen?
Yeah, there's the funny part and then there's like the sad part. So I'm going to start with the funny part first. I came from a background. My dad's a physician assistant. My mom's a registered nurse, so I always knew I was going to go into healthcare. So, like you do when you're interested in something, you start shadowing and following people around. So I was in an in-office procedure where they were removing a cyst from this teenager's arm. And that's when I found out that I don't do well with blood. And I definitely passed out in the middle of my first internship.
Literally.
Literally passed out. Someone caught me before I hit the floor. I was like, okay, I'm going to have to think of something else.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so that's the funny part. The sad part is, as I was going through college, I was a line cook, so that's how I like paid for my way through school. So I learned a lot about food through that, but I worked at a family-owned restaurant, a family-owned Italian restaurant, and the owner taught me everything I knew about cooking, except he ended up with diabetes and he had 2 heart attacks, and unfortunately he passed away at 19. And he was like a father figure to me, and I made his meals like for lunch. Often I cook for his daughter's wedding. And all I could think of is like, what impact did I have on this man's life? And how can I learn how to make really tasty food, but make it healthy? So that way people that do have high or diabetes and heart disease don't have to experience what he experienced. So the funny and the sad.
Well, it certainly proves that it comes from your heart.
Definitely.
And it definitely shows when you work with the people. And I will tell everybody at home, our group members in Transformation Weight Control, they love Casey. And I sent her an email just today, about somebody who met Casey for the first time last night in her first group last night, a woman, and wrote me an email praising Casey. So
Thank you for saying that, because when I first got to the group, I was super intimidated by everybody. I was like, everyone's so smart. I was not ready for that.
Well, we're going to talk about our group and how smart they are, but you are as well, and I could understand maybe feeling a little intimidated, but doesn't happen that way. So let me ask you this, and again, I want to get to our weight loss medication support group and the medicines, the GLP-1s in particular, and talk with you about that. But before we do that, we talk a lot about, helping people to get started on a food plan, meal plan. Alex has asked me to write a brief 10 to 15 page book on losing weight, which that's hard for me because it just keeps coming out of me and I got to edit and edit.
Waiting to happen.
There's a lot. In fact, something I wrote about nutrition, I ran by Casey. What is it that you think about when somebody first comes to you for nutrition counseling? What do you give us the kind of registered dietitian's viewpoint as to how you think about your patient or your client?
I honestly start with like the Maslow hierarchy of needs. Like, do they have the basics in order to be successful? Like, what does their work environment look like? Do they have time for meal planning? And if they don't, what can we think of like a meal delivery service? Do they have access to healthy produce, or do they live in a food desert, and how are we going to navigate through that? And then where are they in their readiness to change? Like, are they pre-contemplation? Is it their doctor sent them to the principal's office and now they have to talk to me? Or is it somebody who asked to see me and they want to be there? Because we're going to tackle that a little bit differently. Like, if you're sent to the principal's office, okay, either way, this visit is all about you, right? What would you like to take away the most? Or what have you heard on the internet that you're like, that doesn't sound right? Let's talk about those things. It doesn't always have to be tackling meal planning and weight management first off. It's a lot of behavior change.
I'm curious, how many people show up who were sent to the principal's office? I mean, is it more people wanting to change, or is it more of people that are there because somebody said you have to change?
I want to almost say 50-50, almost 50-50. Because the first question I always ask is like, what's your reason? Like, why do you think you're here today? What would you like to take away? And sometimes the amount of times I get, I don't know, is brutal. So I'm like, okay, well, let's work through it together. Like, let me be obnoxiously positive to convince you that it's not bad to be here today.
It's a good question. Yeah, you said something interesting. You talked about the stages of change, which I'm sure probably most people don't really know what they are. And you mentioned pre-contemplation. And it sounded like you were saying that you kind of meet patients where they're at, is what I think you're saying. And could you just, for a moment, because you also said there's a lot of behavior change involved in this, and I agree with you. I think whether it's exercise or food or any, there's science to it for sure, but my experience, and I'm sure yours is the same, you can explain all the science you want, but that's not necessarily going to motivate anybody to do anything. I mean, right? I mean, we can both talk about cells and the benefits and how good it would be to eat this way or exercise that way. But my experience, telling people that exercise is good for you isn't necessarily going to get them to do anything. So could you talk just briefly, just for a moment, about those stages of change and how you evaluate where somebody's at and what approach you take? Because I think the listeners at home, some of them are going to be in the pre-contemplation stage, right? And some are going to be at a different stage. So if you could kind of review that just a little bit for the folks.
Definitely. And Alex, am I allowed to call you out? Because my first thing when I think about stages of change, it's really hard to quit smoking cigarettes, right? So what was your What was your moment where you were like, all right, okay, I really got to do something different?
With the cigarettes, I didn't really want to quit. I just knew they were bad for me, but I looked for excuses to keep on smoking. You know, like there was enough stuff coming out of the tobacco industry that said, "Hey, there's no link between cigarettes and any health risks. Keep on smoking." You know, and like, yeah, obviously you find the stuff on the internet, you kind of adopt it, but for me, it was I took Chantix for 30 days, and then and that worked. But then when I went to get a refill, I don't know, I was in a bad mood because I hadn't smoked in a month. And the doctor, you know, he had a long line of patients there, so I just got angry and annoyed, and I left. And that was, I mean, it was I quit on October 3rd, 2009. So that was somewhere in November, and never really looked back. But primarily, the reason why I quit was because cigarettes in New York at the time were like $18 a pack, and I got tired of paying for that.
Mhm.
And yeah, I wasn't feeling great overall, so it was just time to quit.
Thank you. You answered.
But I did not want to. No.
Yeah, you just did it. So pre-contemplation stages. I don't want to change. I don't see a reason to change. I'm gonna look for all the reasons I can not to have to change. Contemplation stages. Okay, like I need to really think about this. Like it's kind of negatively impacting my health. I guess let me get some information to figure out what I need to do. Action stage. I'm going to go to the doctor. I'm going to take this stupid medication. I'm going to get it together. And then double action stage is price is too expensive. I really need to quit. And the thing about the behavior change model is you don't, it's not just like one and done. Like you don't just go from contemplation to or pre-contemplation, contemplation, action, then maintenance. You go back and forth. Like I'm sure there was plenty of times where you're like, wait, why am I doing this again? Like, why do I want to be here? Even when you get to maintenance, especially with weight, like let's say you experience a weight reoccurrence where you've lost 15 pounds, but you gain like 8 pounds back and you're having a really not a Baja blast with life right now. Well, you may go back to contemplation and ask yourself why you're doing that. So again, back to meeting people where they are and okay, you're just thinking about it. You came here today, so maybe you are doing more than just thinking about it. Let's tackle some small stuff you can do to make improvements over time.
Good, right. I just want to confirm what Alex was saying. I live in New York City, and I remember being on the line at a delicatessen once, and the, by this time the price of a pack of cigarettes was $21, and I asked and he asked for a pack of Marlboros, and I said, $21, does that ever stop you? And he said, no, $21 a day, every day, right? That's a lot. Anyway, yeah. So you said something interesting too, and I think it's a very important point because it applies to everything, including weight loss, which is what we do. This sort of back and forth, that it's not a linear progression. And I think sometimes people believe, I know someone in our program, Casey, Transformation Weight Control, said that, she had lost weight, like, I don't know, 12, 14 times in a row, weeks in a row. And then she gained like half a pound one week, and she first word in her email to me was help. and I said, what's that all about? And she said, I gained weight. I said, and I pointed out to her that in 25 years of running the program that I developed at St. Luke's Hospital in New York City, exactly one person in 25 years lost weight every week. So I'd like to get your take a little bit on that, how you balance that for people, and how do you reassure them that, this is the normal and it's okay, and that, we believe that, resilience and bouncing back from adversity is the most important part of losing weight. So how do you handle the fluctuations and the craziness of particularly weight, which can fluctuate 3 to 4 pounds in a day? What do you?
I think when I was a younger dietitian, like 8 years ago, I would completely blame myself. And I'd be so upset for the person. Now, understanding the science of weight loss, like it's not that easy. Life is always going to happen. I think that's where I got such an emphasis on the non-scale related victories. Like, well, look at where you were and look at where you are now, and look at, sure, you gained 2 pounds, but you're still 12 pounds down and you got to play with your kids for an extra 30 minutes because you had the energy to do it. Like, it's way more than just that number on the scale, and like reminding people that's why you're tracking your habits and not just the food that you're eating.
So how do people receive that message that, look at all these, you still lost this much weight and on, and you got on the floor with your kids and so forth. How do they receive that?
Depends. Usually people are like, ugh, this girl again with her positivity. And then sometimes it's like, yeah, you know what? You're right. You do have a valid point. But I also think that's why the group is such a special place, is because when you're just like working with a professional, like a dietitian or a doctor, CDCES, it's like, well, of course this person's going to tell me that. Like, they're seeing something I'm not seeing. But when you work with someone who's also been going through the same thing and you have that ability to relate, then you can really see the progress that you're making. And it's nothing like getting support from someone who's also going through the same thing you are.
You're referring to being in the group. Yeah,
Definitely. The
right.
group helps.
Yeah, I designed the program at the hospital, and I knew that groups were the way to go because it does give you that sense of support and confirmation that this is not an easy behavior to change, eating and so forth, and losing weight. And I went as far as to make the groups closed groups, which means if anybody were to leave, and we didn't lose very many people, but if anybody left, we didn't replace them because and we had a 52-week program. And I wasn't going to replace anybody if they left. And people told me that, you'll be out of business in 6 months. And 25 years later, we're still cooking along. So I was right and they were wrong. And I think the point you're making is really a valid one, in that, because don't you sense people feel they're alone with this? Do you get that sense?
Oh, 100%. I read a study once in regards to Black women specifically, and 1 in 4 Black women are dealing with overweight or obesity. And every single person you talk to is always like, why am I doing so terrible? Why am I doing so awful? And it's like, that's 25% of us. Like, you're not alone. Like, you're not the only one who's like struggling through this. And having that group is just evidence of that.
Yeah. It sounds like a little bit of all or nothing or perfectionistic thinking.
Definitely.
Do you want to say anything about that? It's Alex. It's Alex's nemesis. Perfectionist.
It should be everyone's nemesis.
I didn't want to say anything, but gaining 4 pounds after you lost 40, to me, that's not there's no positive in the 36 pounds. You still gained 4.
I will confirm that he believes this, because I remember once he told me, he wrote an email to me, he'd lost weight, and I said, congratulations. And you know what the first words out of his mouth were? Yeah, but I still have a long way to go.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Every time. I'm like 20 pounds at a time. Okay, 20 pounds.
I don't know if I ever told you this, Casey, but when we were still at the hospital closed the program eventually, and that's when I launched Transformation Weight Control. But when someone would be complaining like that, I only lost 10 pounds, or, I only lost 20 pounds, I would leave the room. Groups were in the library, and my office was right across the hall. So I would excuse myself for a moment, and I'd come back with a dumbbell. And I had a whole bunch of them in the office. And I'd bring a 20-pound dumbbell in and a 10-pound dumbbell, and I'd drop them. And they were solid dumbbells. They wouldn't break, but they made a lot of noise. And I said, come on over here. And if I didn't think they could pick it up, I didn't want them to hurt themselves, I'd help them lift it. And then I'd say, okay, I want you to hold that now. And I said, well, that's what you've been carrying around, and that's what you lost. And for every pound you lose, it's 4 pounds less stress on your joints. What do you think about that now? So I think, that makes the point sometimes, right?
Definitely.
Yeah. I mean, wouldn't you say that a fair number of the clients and patients you counsel are falling prey to that kind of thinking, that it's never good enough?
Definitely. I think real. A lot of times I'm sending out referrals to our psychologist at our clinic. Like, this is something that's a little bit beyond me. Like, I can help you with your nutrition, but this is something that you've been carrying with you for a long time. And when you lose weight at a certain rate, especially if it's coming off fast because you're on medication, it does take your brain a second to catch up. I've had to make people, I'm like, you're going shopping, please bring your friend, or please bring your husband, because you keep buying sizes that are too big. Like, we need to make sure that you have clothes that are fitting. And it's so hard for them to see, like, oh yeah, my size is different how I go through the world is different. I don't have to like turn to my side now to make it through a door easier. I'm not going to be running into things as much. And it's like, yeah, learning how to navigate that way after you spent years doing the opposite, it's tough.
Yeah. You mentioned body dysmorphia, and so I'm sure there are probably some people at home who don't know exactly what that means. Could you just describe that?
Yeah, it's just not recognizing the body that you're in now. So I could have lost 80 pounds and I look in the mirror. I don't see someone who's 80 pounds down. I still see the same person that was at 250,
Yeah. As I listen, I have been doing this a long time, and I think it's the intersection of the biology and the psychology that we, as weight loss clinicians, if you will, have to confront every day, really, because our body is working to defeat weight loss sometimes. Our bodies don't want us to lose weight, and they change hormones and things that make it harder. And then it hits like the level of our threshold of frustration almost, that we're doing the same thing and we were losing weight and now we're not. And how do you cope with that? And that's something you see, I'm sure, in your private, because we see it in
Yes,
the group.
all the time. I mean, as you lose weight, you don't have to burn as many calories to do your activities of daily living, which means, okay, at this weight, you ate 1,800 calories. Well, if you've lost weight, now you have to eat less calories, even though you've been making progress that whole time. And that's its own mental loop to have to jump through.
So let's switch gears for a moment. I want to point out, and then I want to ask you about calories and how you think about that. But I just want to point out and praise Casey one more little time that, she has a lot of science background, but you can hear how she's talking that, she almost sounded like a psychologist, really. And it's a tribute to her that, she takes a broader view than just, okay, here's a deck of cards and that's 4 ounces of protein and blah, 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 which makes people want to jump out the window
Every time.
every time, right? No one wants to see that deck of cards anymore, right? And so just kudos to you for having the breadth of approach to this. So let's go back to the calories for a moment. You mentioned that when people are losing weight or as they lose weight, we know it becomes a little harder. Part of it is that they weigh less. What do you do about that? Like, how do you approach the fact that they're maybe requiring fewer calories or something? Tell us about that.
For sure. A lot of times, to be honest, I don't do a whole lot of calorie counting. Even with the estimate, like using the apps or sometimes even look at the nutrition facts label, those can be wrong. Calorie counting can be off by 10 to 30%. So for a lot of times, back to that behavior change, I try to focus on food choices. So are you choosing lean protein options most of the time? How many servings of veggies are you having each day? Do you have enough fiber so you don't have cravings for simple carbohydrates? Quit skipping meals. Maybe if you stop skipping meals, you wouldn't be up at 12 a.m. like looking in the refrigerator for something to eat. So we're working on those things more than we're working on, sitting down and measuring out half a cup of rice and then putting it in your app and making sure it still fits in your macros.
So that's interesting for me because I lost a little over 40 pounds since November. And the only way I can do it is if I track absolutely everything every day. And I do intermittent fasting, and not just like normal intermittent fasting. I have to make that weird. So I'll eat lunch and dinner on one day, and then the next day I'll only eat lunch. So talking about skipping meals, I have like a 23-hour fast. And that seems to work for me, although it's getting harder and harder to do.
Yeah, before you speak, Kate, I just want to interrupt here 1 second and just say that Alex and I have been going back and forth for a couple months now because his weight loss has stalled. And he is doing like an intermittent fasting, and he could eat 2,200 calories one day and 1,500 the next. What, Casey? How would you, if he was your client or patient, what would you say?
Be like, first of all, Alex, thanks for giving me 5 extra gray hairs, because now we have to figure out how you can get consistent amount of calories in a smaller time frame. And it's doable, but oh gosh, it is one thing that can definitely, you can see I'm rubbing, it definitely stresses me out. I have a few patients who just, it just works with their schedule. So they're just like, I really need to follow this eating pattern. And I'm like, okay, we'll figure it out. And the reason why it's so important that we figure it out, and it's really, I'm happy that you're counting calories while you're intermittent fasting, is because if you don't get enough calories and protein in, bye bye muscle mass. And then once your muscle mass starts dropping, bye bye metabolism. And then we're having to try to figure out how we can build it back so your metabolism works for you versus against you. It's
Yeah,
totally cool.
that's actually been pretty good. I gained a bunch of muscle overall, 7 pounds, I think. And I do a DEXA scan, so that's like legit muscle.
Yeah.
And I do strength training 4 or 5 times a week. I run 4 or 5 times a week. Right now it's 200 degrees outside, so that's less. But yeah,
He lives in Nevada in the desert.
yeah.
Wow. Okay. You're a hero.
A quick example of all or nothing thinking, then we will move on. Alex was complaining to me because his performance wasn't improving in his running. And I asked him, well, what was the temperature today, Alex? And he said 98 degrees. And I said, and you're comparing yourself to 3 months ago. And what was the temperature then? 72. And he ran the same time, but he couldn't. And this is a very smart guy. I mean, he writes computer code, programming. I mean, the real deal, right? Master's degree in computer security. And he couldn't make the connection that running at 98 degree temperature was a little bit harder than running at 72 degrees. And yet he managed to run the same speed, but he didn't see that as an achievement. So,
No, I get that. It's just there will not be any improvement over the summer.
right.
We're accepting that.
Casey, you mentioned the word macro. You said that quickly in passing, and I just want you to explain to people what that is, because I'm sure most people don't know that term.
Yeah, so your macronutrients, like your carbohydrates, protein, and fat, they make up your total calories. And each one has a different amount of calories. So 1 gram of carb is 4 calories. 1 gram of protein is also 4 calories. 1 gram of fat's 9. I always sneak in there. I'm like, and 1 gram of alcohol is 7 calories. So just picture that when you want that extra drink. We're probably pushing you over your caloric load.
Okay.
But you do want to like have a good ratio with those. And it's always surprising. Everyone thinks they have to go very low carbohydrate, but does anybody know the percent macro for carbs that you're supposed to have each day?
I get like 50.
50%? Good.
Roughly.
Yeah. Go ahead, Rich. You got this.
I'm not going to say. I'm with that. 45 to 50. I'll go with that.
Yeah. Well, you can go higher. You go to 60%. You go 45 to 60%, but yes.
Yeah. And so 2 questions. One is, what about protein and fat, and how much of that? And then you also talked about the muscle and the loss of the muscle and so forth. So if you could first speak about the quantity of protein and fat, and then that association with muscle.
For sure. I always have to look up fat. I don't know why, but it's like around 10 to 30%. I only know that because I literally looked it up today.
And you mean 10 to 30% of the total calories that you eat all day?
Yes, total calorie intake.
Okay.
And then around 20 to 30% for protein. Of course, like higher if like weight loss is your goal. The cool thing about protein is this is going to get real sciencey. There's called the thermogenetic effect of food. Did I say that right?
No.
Anyways, the amount of calories it takes to break down the food that you eat, and protein is one of those things that actually makes your body work harder to burn it. So you're kind of like feeding 2 birds with one hand, like you're building muscle, but also you're making your body work harder to do it. So
right.
Protein's been everybody's fan favorite.
I think the word you're searching for was thermogenic.
Thank you. I don't know like where it was in my brain.
Well, I've listened to my own podcast here sometimes, and I say, oh my God, I can't believe I said that. So I'm with you. You kind of forget, or you get carried away. Okay. And the importance of muscle and weight loss, how is that?
Yeah, so important. I love using, I wish I had access to a DEXA scan, but I love using a BIA scale or something that's going to tell us the difference between like your muscle mass versus fat mass versus water weight. And a lot of times you'll see people who are really frustrated about their weight loss. Like they're losing 2 pounds 1 week and the next they gain 3 back. And when we look at their body composition, If their fat composition is 49% of their total body weight, that's pushing your metabolism down. Fat's not very metabolically active. It really just sits there and hangs out and honestly slows you down a little bit versus our muscles. My favorite example is always asking, do you think we're burning calories right now? And people are like, no. And I'm like, well, your heart's beating, so that takes calories. You're breathing, that takes calories. And we're not just like blobs on the ground right now. Our muscles are holding us up, so that takes calories. So the more muscle I have, I'm burning calories at a higher rate even when I'm sleeping. So making sure you get enough protein to sustain that is really important.
Because the muscle is primarily made up of protein, is what you're saying, and that's why it's so important. Okay, you mentioned BIA scale. Could you just tell the folks at home what that means? BIA.
Oh, I'm gonna mess this up too. I already know.
Well, let me go back. Let me take it back for a second. Casey, you mentioned the BIA scale, the bioelectric impedance scale.
There you go.
Could you tell us what it does, and then if you could break down body composition for us a little bit, and then I'm going to transition to the GLPs. But if you could talk a little bit about the bioelectric impedance and the importance of measuring that body, how important body composition is, and what body composition is.
You're a hero. Thank you for doing that for me. Also, Alex, you don't have to cut that out, by the way, because it's okay to be wrong. So those scales, you can find a variety of different prices for them. Like you can find them off of Amazon for like $50. Or you can like go purchase one for your clinic for $3,000 to $10,000, depending on which model you get. But typically for all of them, you have to take your shoes and socks off. For some, you hold handles, which is a little bit more accurate. And what it does is send a small electric signal through your feet all the way up to your head and all the way back down. And based off the speed of which it goes up and goes down, it can assess your body composition. So if it's moving a little bit slower, you probably have a little bit more fat mass. If it's moving quickly, go ahead. What are you going to say, Rich?
No. Go. I don't want to interrupt you. Go ahead.
I was going to say, if it's moving quickly, you got your hydration goals met for that day. High five. And you probably have a little bit more muscle mass going for you. The reason I like it so much is typically in primary care offices, you see a lot of use of BMI. And BMI is awful. It's like, well, sure, this guy's like BMI 35, but he's a bodybuilder. He has like 10% fat mass. Like he's doing great, versus if we have your body composition, I can estimate your protein off of your actual skeletal mass instead of just saying, I think this is what you need each day. So I can see what your water intake is. Like, no wonder, 1, you're constipated. 2, like you feel dehydrated all the time. And 3, we're seeing it on the scale. You actually really are dehydrated. So it's a really helpful tool to have.
Okay, got it. So by body composition, you mean the percent of fat and muscle on their body, pretty much. That's
100%.
That's what you're talking about. Okay, good. And then I guess I have to now address BMI since you brought it up. I wasn't going to approach that, but the body mass index, the ratio of your weight to your height. If you could for 1 minute give us the take on BMI, body mass index, because I know that people kind of, first of all, they kind of confuse that with body fat, and it's not. So if you could talk about it for just 1 moment, because I've been doing this a very long time, and I don't pay attention much to BMI any longer. A little bit for certain things, but not a lot. So if you could talk about it for just 1 moment, and then I want to switch gears to the GLPs.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, it wasn't even made by like a physician or anybody. It was a mathematician that came up with BMI. So
that's correct.
Throw that out. And then it can honestly lead to a lot of weight bias. I've had plenty of people come in the office and they're like, well, my orthopedic surgeon wants me to have a BMI of 26 before they'll have knee replacement surgery. And I'm like, but why? We can see a great impact. Like if you had the surgery, you could have exercise, which is going to make it easier to lose weight in the first place. Why do we have to wait till you get to this certain number?
Okay.
It's just very inaccurate. It doesn't assess for where the fat is in your body. Like if it's around your abdomen, then of course you're getting more of a negative metabolic load. It's just an overall estimation. It's awful.
Okay. So what you're saying then is that you could, because the BMI categorizes people into, I hate the terms, all of them, normal weight, overweight, and obesity. But what you're saying is that, with the category of obesity is a BMI over 30, and that's, again, the ratio of your weight to your height. But what you're saying is then, at least what I'm hearing, is that you could have somebody with a higher BMI, but if they are physically fitter and have lower body composition, a better body composition, more muscle, let's say. Their BMI might be artificially high because they have a lot of muscle, but they could still be healthier. So that's why you're saying if a doctor says, well, you have to have your BMI at 26, that's not really paying attention to the person, is what you're saying.
100%. I've talked to plenty of people who have a better BMI number than I do, who's struggling with diabetes, hypertension, high cholesterol, and all of that.
Right.
So
okay. It doesn't discriminate. Yeah. Okay, good. All right. So let's switch gears and let's talk about the work we do together, because I really wanted to get to that. And so Casey and I run the weight loss medication support group at Transformation Weight Control. It is our most successful group. It's very popular. We've been doing it for about 16 months now. I did an exhaustive search the other day, and I found that there was not one other weight loss medication support group in the country. I searched for almost 75 minutes. The only one I found was at a single hospital, and they only did it once a month at noontime when people are too busy to attend. And it was only an hour. And it was led by a social worker who, and social workers are fine, but they don't necessarily have the background in medicine and science like you and I do. We're really the only ones. So can you tell the folks, like, first of all, so we're dealing mostly with GLP-1s. They're called glucagon-like peptides, and meaning that this is a hormone that helps make your insulin stable. It suppresses glucagon output, delays gastric emptying. Could you talk for a moment about the GLP-1s? Give people, because we're hear it all the time now. I mean, this is the most, everybody's saying GLP-1. I doubt anybody even really understands what it is. But could you explain that a little bit for people?
And I love the fact that you said hormone. And I really want to emphasize this is a natural thing your body is already making. And I don't think a lot of people realize that. They think it's like, oh, I'm just injecting something that I don't know what's going to happen to me in 10 years down the line. It's like, oh, your body's already producing it. Unfortunately, some people produce less. And GLP-1 is very important for your satiety level. So how full do you feel? For how long do you feel that fullness? It impacts your brain. Are you constantly feeling like you think about food all day? Like, what's my next meal? What's my next snack? GLP-1 hormone allows you to reduce that so you don't think as much about it. And then as a CDCES, it's a total game changer. What did we have before besides an intensive nutrition intervention to give people? And life nowadays does not promote that kind of behavior change. It's really hard to be consistent with that. And so now we have this really helpful tool. It's this can make you more sensitive to insulin that you're already producing. This can help those hunger cues. This can save your pancreas's beta cells, the things that produce insulin. This can protect your heart. This can protect your liver and reduce fatty liver disease. It's the closest thing, and it's weird to say this as a dietitian to talk about a medication like this, but this is the closest thing to a miracle we've had in a long time.
Well, I will confirm that. I think it's life-altering. I was first starting to call them game changers, and now I'm calling them life-altering. So what you're saying is that these GLP-1s are working in the brain to kind of slow down or stop the obsessing about the food. We kind of hear people say less food noise, but they have fewer cravings, so it's working in the pathways in your brain that cause that sort of dysregulation where you crave. And then you mentioned also that it's helping you to feel fuller, so it's what we call delaying gastric emptying. Could you just explain that for one moment for folks, because that's a big part of the GLP-1s?
Well, back to carbohydrates, this is my favorite example with the slow gastric transit. I like to think of carbohydrates are your body's primary fuel source, right? Question, where do we start to break down food in our body? Here's the first place. Alex, you got this.
Stomach.
You don't just swallow food, do you?
No, you're right. You're right.
So we actually have enzymes in our mouth that break down carbohydrates, and that's a good way to see if it breaks down fast or if it breaks down slow. So imagine a goldfish real quick. You could just let a goldfish melt in your mouth, and then by the time it gets to your stomach, it's ready to absorb, right? It's not doing really anything for your feeling of fullness. Versus if I have something high in fiber like a bean, or a piece of corn. Think about it. I could chew a corn. I could swallow corn. I might use the bathroom and still see that corn later. So what GLP does is when it gets to your stomach and then to your intestines, it's let's like hold on for a second. Let's like really work on this, break it down and absorb it. And we're going to make it move slower so you feel full for a longer amount of time. Now, that can be a good thing and a bad thing, right? So you don't feel like you have to constantly snack. But as we hear in group, everyone's struggling with constipation. So it's really important while you're on the GLP-1, make sure you have enough water to help keep things moving along. I hope that was a good explanation of it.
Yeah, Casey has an uncanny ability now to be able to help people with reducing side effects of the GLP-1s, which we know are nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, constipation. They don't always last so long and they're kind of moderate, but Casey's been able to really figure out over the last 16 months how to advise people to eat so that they minimize those side effects. I was going to ask you to describe a little bit about the support group, but if you would address just a little bit about the food to reduce what you've learned and how, because I hear you and it's genius what you have to say, frankly. And if you could maybe clue people in, because I'm sure there are a lot of people taking GLP-1s who are listening to this and maybe they'd like to hear what you have to say about reducing the side effects with food.
Definitely. And I'm really proud of my clinic because before they'll start someone on the medication, now they'll send them to me first so I can give them like, hey, this is what you need to look out for. Because some people will start the medication and they're like, I can't tolerate this. And then they'll like get off in a month because they weren't prepared. They didn't have enough information for it. So we know that the medication makes food move slower through your system. We know things that are high in fat already move slow through your system. So if you have like beef, pork, fried foods, and not just like fried pork chops, but like French fries, it's going to move super slow through your system and you're going to feel really nauseous. Hopefully not nauseous to throw up, but sometimes that happens. So you do really want to focus on lean food choices like your chicken, turkey, fish. I always say the less legs, the better to prevent that nausea. We also found that it helps to have a little bit of a diet transition when you first take your injection, especially when you get to like those higher level doses. What we found from the group is like those first couple of days, it's like, I don't want to eat anything, but you still got to get your nutrition in. So let's focus on hydration and maybe softer protein choices like maybe a protein shake or plant-based protein like beans to help reduce that nausea because skipping meals sometimes makes nausea a lot worse. With the diarrhea, making sure that you have enough fiber to help bulk up your stool so you don't have to experience it enough or as much, and having electrolytes in your beverages to help with the fluid that you may lose. The cool thing about introducing fiber into your diet, fiber naturally tells your body to produce more GLP-1, so you can actually, again, feed two birds with one stone. Feed two birds with one hand. So prevent that diarrhea, but also help your GLP-1 be a more effective medication for you.
Two things. So you're saying the GLP-1 is made naturally in our body. So when people are injecting Wegovy or Ozempic or Zepbound or whatever, they're injecting something that is naturally occurring in their body. Their body is not going to reject this because there's GLP-1 everywhere in the body. Is what you're saying, right?
Definitely.
Yeah. So okay, and that makes a lot of sense. Is there anything else you want to just talk just a bit about the side effects at all? Is there anything else you have to say about that, or even just how people, if they're taking a GLP-1, should think about eating? Because I read all the Reddit boards and I read the Facebook boards, and people just seem to be really in the dark. And I often think, gee, these questions people in our group could answer, because we're educating them so well. So do you have a few words of advice maybe for the GLP-1 users out there in terms of just the overall picture of how do you approach it?
One, listen to your body. It's going to tell you everything that you need to know. If you have something that might not be the healthiest for you, the medication is going to let you know by like, hey, you're going to be nauseous for a minute. I also think that it's really important too, and I always say this to my patients is, yeah, sure, you can eat smaller amounts of the foods that you're already eating. Great. But look where those foods got you in the first place, right? Be open to trying something new and see how that impacts you. That's the privilege that this medication gives you. It gives you the ability to be more open with your choices, trying things that you may have not tried before, because now they're going to be the more comfortable option for you.
So could you talk a little bit about the support group that we run and what we do there and what happens there and the benefits of it?
Of course. It's part comedy, part science. It's like the best thing on the face of the
I will say we have a lot of fun.
Me
We
too.
do. First of all, it's a pleasure to work with Casey and everybody in the group. We have like 17 people in the group, and we can't, the group is weekly, and Casey will give you all the details. And everybody is, as she said, smart, and we laugh and we have a really good time. It's a serious subject, but you don't always have to. You can have a sense of humor about it. So we do that. So
Definitely.
yeah, and Casey really adds to that because Casey is actually pretty funny.
Remember that time we played Jeopardy? Sorry to interrupt. Remember when we played Jeopardy and it just turned into like a intellectual brawl?
We did, Alex. We Casey made up a Jeopardy game she found online, I guess, or something, and we were presenting it on the screen, and people were going crazy, like the competitive juices, people talking over each other and screaming and carrying on to answer the questions. Satish and I were looking at each other and just laughing.
Never do this again.
We never did do it again.
A good time.
It was a good time. We've done some other quizzes and things, but we have not done. I mean, we should return to Jeopardy, I think, at one point.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe, right, with maybe our bicycle helmets on or something.
Right.
So, could you talk a little bit about the support group and what it is that you're doing in there? What's going on there? What's happening?
For sure. So the first few minutes, I feel like we always dedicate to access, which is huge in healthcare, is always access to care because they're always taking something off somebody's formulary. So how can you still maintain this medication that has been keeping you healthy for this amount of time? And then we deep dive into the not just like the mechanics of the medication, but like how it impacts certain body parts and composition, and what are some nutrition ways that you can navigate through that. I always love to start off with the non-scale related victories because I always like to start off with a positive note. And what I really love about that is someone's like, well, I feel like it gave me this part of my life back. And then you'll just see the light bulb click in like three other people, and they're like, oh my gosh, same thing, and it's like, that's why we do this. It's really beautiful to not only give them access to care, but knowledge, and then just see them grow and support one another.
You mentioned non-scale related victories. That's what you like to start the group with, and that's what you said, where people are lighting up and okay.
Just cheering each other on the whole time.
Yeah. I think so too. I think that the support each other that people are giving each other. I mean, don't you find that to be the case also? That there was a group, Alex, that Casey and I were running the other week, and I don't think we said two words, either one of us. Like the group ran the group. Right? I mean, we come with our PowerPoints loaded up, ready to go. I mean, I have over 2,000 slides in my medication PowerPoint because there's so much data showing how good they are for you. And I record everything and read everything and put it all into PowerPoint. So I got over 2,000. But there we were, Casey and I, the group was running itself, talking about supporting each other and so forth. That was and I got great feedback the next day from that. I kind of felt a little bad because Casey and I had nothing to do with it. Everybody said it was a really great. Okay, so I'm watching the clock. Alex said 60 minutes, and I'm on board with that. And I'm seeing it says 57:40. Could you summarize the group for folks at home? What you think some of the key takeaways maybe are that people could expect? Let's say if they join the program, or the people who are already in it. What are some of the key takeaways that maybe occur or happen?
Learning and support is like the biggest two. I've learned so much from the actual participants in the group. And it's like, it seems like little things, but it's not like, well, this is a new snack idea. Well, this new snack idea may actually change somebody else's way they navigate. Or like the nutrition ways to manage side effects. Like, well, now we can stay on the medication longer because you're not having just to deal with this horrible GI side effect. These are things that you can change in your diet. Or if you've been in a stall for a long time, or you're not feeling as strong as you used to, the group really does come together. It's like, well, Casey just said, this is the amount of protein that we need. This is how I'm getting that protein in. Well, this is how I'm getting that protein in. So it's just like continuous learning, continuous support. It's a really beautiful thing to watch.
Great. Yeah, I think that summarizes it nicely. I always say you learn more by listening than talking. And I know that, I mean, I have 1,000 textbooks on my bookshelf and graduate training, all that. But the truth is, I learned everything, most of what I know from listening, just like you're talking about. And
That is why I'm here.
it is
Yay, Alex.
honestly, it is a privilege to work with these folks and see how those medications. I was never a medication guy because they didn't, your body always figured out a way to defeat it. But now it's a new ball game, and it's transforming lives like we've never seen. Like you said, I think you used the word miracle, and I think there are just so many people walking around in the dark about it because they're not getting the kind of support that we're offering. And a busy physician in his or her office really can't offer that kind of support because, number one, they have a waiting room filled with sick people. And, if somebody's got a bellyache or strep throat, that's not the time to talk to them about nutrition. And they also have, a lot of diseases to know, right? And they have to have a lot of knowledge about a lot of different medicines and good memory for that. You and I, we just need to know what we're doing there, and that's it. We have just the one thing. So it's I think it's a combination that works nicely. The doctor is taking care of the things that doctors should be taking care of, and we can take care of the things that we take care of. And that's where I think that it works so well, the work that we're doing, because I saw this paper a couple of weeks ago and it said there were 25,000 visits to the emergency room from side effects of GLP-1s, 25,000 in 2022. And in the 16 months we've been running, you and I have been running, we have not had one person go to the emergency room. Not one. And this paper is saying 25,000. And I think part of the reason for that is that people just, they're not getting the kind of support. Would you agree? Would you say that that's probably the case?
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
And then where are they also getting the medication from? Some places are not safe.
Right. Okay, great. All right. So we are 1 minute and 23 over. I'm going to leave this off with Casey. Is there anything you want to sort of give your nutrition philosophy, your dietitian thing?
Razzle dazzle.
Yeah, your razzle dazzle. You want to razzle dazzle people. What message would you like to leave people with in terms of the work that you do and the field you're in, food and eating and so forth?
Be selfish. You are your number one biggest fan. You're always going to be there for yourself. Be selfish. Take care of yourself. If you feel like you're too shy to be in a group, come hang out and just be quiet. And then all of a sudden you'll notice I won't let you be quiet, but also you'll start talking and you'll be open and you'll be sharing and you'll learn how to be selfish the right way.
Terrific. That's great. Okay, so we'll wrap up. If you are interested in following up, you can reach us at our website, transformationweightcontrol.com, and you can send me an email, rich@transformationweightcontrol.com, and I can pass that information on to Casey if you have a question for her. And you can even make an appointment with me free of charge on the website, transformationweightcontrol.com, and we really, this is coming from our heart. We really want to help people, and we really do see that, these meds, they are here to stay. They are the wave of the future. And I will say we have done a good job of helping people with this. Nobody's going to the emergency room, nothing like that. Casey's right on top of all the food things and all. And I just feel like we're doing a job that nobody else really is. So I hope that people think about that, because it would be an honor, honestly, to help people with this, because there are times in that group I come to tears when I hear the stories about how it's like your life before the medication and after the medication. And you talked about that earlier. It's transforming people. Suddenly you're not hungry, you're full, you're not obsessing about food. It takes a lot of support to deal with all those changes. I observe that it's very unnerving to have to deal with all these things, right? I mean, I started the group because people were asking me questions who were taking the meds. It sounded like they'd had weight loss surgery. And I said, gee, we have to have a support group for them. Casey and I are really cut from the same cloth, I think. It's really from our heart. We mean it. We want to help. And it is just it's just a pleasure to do so.
You've created a wonderful thing, Rich. I hope you're proud of yourself every single day.
Well, thank you, Casey. I appreciate that. I do feel good about it. And 44 years and I'm still not bored. I find this, I am enthusiastic. Last night, our group run for 75 minutes, Alex, and but we owed them some extra time because we had a Zoom glitch. That was sort of my fault. So we gave them some extra time. Do you know, Casey? You know what time we got done? 8:30.
Yeah, I like right at
8:30. We were supposed to end at 7:15, and I just stayed with folks, and we just kept on going. And it's just sort of an organic, natural thing that we have that we're providing people, and it's just a privilege to get to know people so intimately and part of their life. And I know you feel the same, and you're very good at it too. So
thank you. Ditto.
Yeah, it is truly, I know this is sort of like getting a little bit too much, but it is a pleasure to work with Casey. So thank you all for tuning in. Again, if you have any questions, feel free. You can email me. I can get the questions to Casey, Rich at transformationweightcontrol.com. And tune into the rest of our podcast. Last week we had a group member whose life has really transformed, and you could listen to that, Anna's journey before and after weight loss medication. And if that doesn't bring a tear to your eye, then you should go to your cardiologist to see if you've got a heart, because it was just very moving and informative, and just as important as I hope.
I think next week, if I'm not mistaken, we also have.
Is Mark coming next week?
That's going to be a great
I
one.
think it's next week. Yeah.
Mark is, he's actually on our website in a before and after picture, and he was heavier before, and he's transformed his life. And there's a picture of him now with a 40-pound medicine ball at the swimming pool, and he's like this, and he's slamming the thing down. And so, yeah, he's quite knowledgeable and so forth and so forth. So, yeah. Anyway, thanks everybody for tuning in. This is just a highlight of the week, frankly, to do this and to have folks like Casey on is a pleasure and a privilege to have such committed clinicians to advise you and give you the way it really is, which seems to me to be lacking quite a bit in the internet world. So I feel like that's what we're doing. So thank you all. And this will be online on Spotify and Apple and 1,000 other
everywhere where you get a podcast.
That you talk to Alex about, because this is way over my pay grade.
And even on YouTube.
Even on YouTube. We even have it on YouTube where you can watch the video. That I know. Yeah. That I know. Okay, that's it, I guess. So we'll wrap up, and thank you all for listening, and give us the countdown. And which dog is that, Alex?
This is Marley.
Marley.
Yeah. Very nice meeting you, Casey.
Nice
have a great night.
Alex.
Okay, thank you all for tuning in.